the richest people in history and their hidden secrets. History tells us about kings, emperors, and conquerors, but history rarely tells us about the men and women who paid for their wars, controlled their debts, and decided their survival. Because the truth is uncomfortable. The richest people in history were not always the ones sitting on thrones. Many of them never ruled publicly. They ruled silently, through money, fear, dependency, and systems so powerful that empires collapsed without a single sword being raised. What you are about to hear is not the story of wealth you were taught in school. This is the story of how wealth learned to hide, and how hidden wealth learned to rule the world. Welcome to History's Echo, where history doesn't glorify power, it exposes how power truly works. This is where forgotten truths return, and the past explains the present. When gold created gods. Long before stock markets, banks, or corporations existed, wealth had a simple form: gold. Gold decided who lived comfortably and who starved. Gold decided which army marched and which city burned. Gold decided whose name would survive history and whose would vanish forever. In the ancient world, the richest individuals were not businessmen. They were rulers who understood one brutal truth: if you control resources, you control people. One of the earliest examples was King Croesus of Lydia, whose name literally became synonymous with wealth. His gold mines fed entire economies. His coins standardized trade across civilizations. But Croesus believed wealth itself was power, and that belief destroyed him, because gold alone cannot protect you from strategy. When Persia invaded, Croesus lost everything. His wealth made him confident. His confidence made him careless. History learned its first lesson. Visible wealth creates visible enemies. The pharaohs. Richer than history admits. In ancient Egypt, wealth reached a scale so massive that modern economists still struggle to calculate it. The pharaohs didn't just own gold. They owned land, labor, food supply, religion, and time itself. The Nile was their asset. Harvests were taxed. People worked not for wages, but survival. But here was their greatest secret. The pharaohs understood belief was more powerful than money. By declaring themselves gods, they eliminated rebellion. If the ruler is divine, resistance becomes heresy. Their wealth wasn't stored in banks. It was stored in faith. And when faith collapsed, dynasties collapsed with it. Because once people stop believing, gold becomes just metal again. Solomon, the king who bought peace. King Solomon of Israel is often remembered for wisdom, but few understand the scale of his wealth. Gold flowed into his kingdom from Africa, Arabia, and Asia. Trade routes bent around Jerusalem. Tribute poured in from neighboring nations. Solomon didn't conquer through war. He conquered through alliances paid for with wealth. Marriage treaties bought political gifts. Economic dependency. He understood something revolutionary. War is expensive. Peace is profitable. But Solomon also learned the hidden cost of extreme wealth. To maintain his empire, taxes increased. Labor became forced. The people grew resentful. After his death, the kingdom split in two. Because wealth can build unity, but unchecked wealth always breeds division. Rome. When then, wealth stopped wearing crowns. By the time Rome dominated the Mediterranean, wealth evolved again. Senators became richer than emperors. Generals became richer than the state. Private fortunes quietly eclipsed public authority. Men like Marcus Licinius Crassus amassed wealth so vast that he could fund entire legions on his own. Crassus didn't need votes. He bought loyalty. He didn't need laws. He influenced lawmakers. Rome discovered a dangerous reality. When private wealth surpasses public power, the republic is already dead. It just doesn't know it yet. Crassus eventually died chasing more gold. Greed pulled him east. Hubris killed him. But his legacy survived. The realization that money doesn't need permission to rule. The turning point, when wealth learned to disappear. As empires rose and fell, one pattern repeated endlessly. The richest people were always targeted, looted, assassinated, overthrown, so wealth adapted. By the late ancient world and early medieval era, the smartest rich individuals stopped being visible rulers. They became financiers. They funded kings without becoming kings. They profited from wars without fighting them. They survived regime changes because they financed all sides. This is where the real story begins. Because once wealth stops showing its face, it becomes almost impossible to destroy. The ancient world believed wealth was gold, land, and crowns. But history was quietly preparing a far more dangerous form of power. Keep watching the video patiently. There are many more unknown things coming. You will see how bankers replaced kings, how debt became a weapon, and how the richest families in history learned to control nations without ruling them. When money stopped serving kings by the early medieval era, something dangerous had become clear to the wealthy. Crowns were fragile, empires collapsed, dynasties burned, but money, if placed correctly, survived everything. So the richest people in history made a strategic decision. They stopped ruling and started financing those who did. This was not retreat, it was evolution. Kings needed armies, armies needed weapons, weapons needed money, and the people who controlled money no longer needed swords. The medieval bankers, power without a throne. In a Europe torn apart by constant war, a new kind of elite emerged. They did not wear armor. They did not march with flags. They sat behind desks, bankers. Families in cities like Florence, Venice, and Genoa quietly built networks of credit. They loaned money to monarchs who promised repayment after victory. But victory was never guaranteed. So bankers added interest, collateral, political favors, and slowly kings became dependent. The Medici family of Florence perfected this system. They did not seize power by force. They bought influence, one loan at a time. Popes owed them money. Kings owed them money. Entire city-states relied on Medici credit to function. And here was their greatest secret. When everyone owes you, no one can afford to oppose you. The Medici ruled without ruling. They survived assassinations, revolutions, and regime changes, because when rulers fell, their debts remained. War as a business model. As Europe entered the age of endless conflict, wealth learned something horrifyingly efficient. War was not a tragedy, war was an investment. The richest financiers funded both sides of conflicts. If one king lost, the other still owed money. Either way, the banker won. This is when wealth became immune to morality. Death was irrelevant, ideology was irrelevant. Only repayment mattered, and the richer the war, the richer the financiers became. The Rothschilds. Information is power. By the late 18th century, wealth evolved again. Gold was still valuable, but information became priceless. The Rothschild family built a private communication network faster than any government system. They knew when battles were won before official announcements. They knew when markets would rise or collapse before traders reacted. Speed made them unstoppable. The famous story of Waterloo is not about betrayal, it is about advantage. While governments waited for messengers, the Rothschilds already knew the outcome. Markets moved, fortunes shifted. This revealed a terrifying truth. Whoever controls information controls reality. The Rothschilds did not need armies. Their knowledge moved nations. When wealth learned to become legal, as public anger toward rich families grew, the wealthy adapted once more. They stopped being families. They became institutions. Trusts to foundations. Banks to corporations. Names changed. Power remained. Ownership became fragmented. Responsibility disappeared. And suddenly, wealth could no longer be blamed on individuals. This is when money became invisible, and invisible power is the hardest to destroy. The price of invisible wealth. But hidden power comes with consequences. When wealth detaches from responsibility, societies fracture. The rich no longer see the poor. The poor no longer trust the system. Revolutions begin not because people hate wealth, but because they feel excluded from it. France learned this brutally. Russia learned it violently. History repeated its warning. When wealth hides too well, it creates monsters on both sides. By the modern era, wealth no longer needed kings, armies, or flags. It had become something far more powerful, a system. Keep watching the video patiently. There are many more unknown things coming. You will see how modern billionaires inherited ancient strategies, how money now controls attention instead of land, and why today's richest people may be more powerful than any emperor who ever lived. The modern gods of money. By the time the world entered the 20th century, wealth had completed its transformation. It no longer needed crowns. It no longer needed armies. It no longer needed loyalty through fear. Modern wealth required only one thing: dependency. The richest individuals of the modern era understood a lesson ancient kings never fully grasped. People don't need to be conquered if they can be made dependent. Rockefeller, the man who owned energy. John D. Rockefeller did not become rich by selling oil. He became rich by making oil unavoidable. Factories needed it, railroads needed it, navies needed it, homes needed it. Rockefeller built a system where avoiding his product was impossible. And when public outrage rose, he did something revolutionary. He disappeared. His empire didn't vanish. It changed its name. Trusts, boards, foundations. Power survived because visibility ended. Rockefeller proved a modern rule of wealth. If people can see you clearly, you are already vulnerable. The age of banks and central power governments learned they could no longer function without financial institutions. Debt-funded infrastructure, debt-funded wars, debt-funded survival. Banks became permanent partners of the state. And the people who controlled those banks quietly gained something emperors never had: permanence. Elections changed leaders. Revolutions changed flags. But debt remained, and whoever managed debt outlived every political cycle. Tech, the new empire. In the 21st century, wealth evolved again. Gold became irrelevant. Factories became optional. Data became everything. The richest individuals now control attention, information, behavior. They don't sell products. They sell ecosystems. You don't just use their platforms. You live inside them. And here is the most dangerous secret of modern wealth. When people willingly give you their time, they give you their power. Why history never names the true richest. When historians list the richest people of all time, they focus on visible fortunes. But the real wealth is rarely measurable. It exists in influence, in systems, in dependency. The richest people in history are not remembered because they designed the rules, not because they broke them. They didn't steal power, they engineered it. The final truth history whispers: every era creates its gods. In the ancient world, gods ruled through belief. In medieval times, through gold. In modern times, through systems. And every time, humanity repeats the same mistake. We look at who appears powerful, instead of who made power necessary. History doesn't move forward in straight lines. It echoes. The wealth that ruled ancient empires still whispers through modern systems. The names have changed. The faces have changed. But the methods remain. This is history's echo, where the past explains the present, and power reveals itself quietly. If this story made you question how the world truly works, stay with us, because once you hear the echo, you start seeing the system. Subscribe, follow, and stay curious.